Hey, welcome back to another NFL Rough Draft Walter Football Training Camp Roundup. Again, I said that my goal here is to try to make this as quick as possible for you guys. I want to get you as much information as I can in as short a period of time as I can. So we're going to get right into it today. We're going to be taking a look at the NFC East and the NFC North today and what's happened over the first week of camp. Before we do that, a couple of headlines that happened after I recorded yesterday. First one is Noah Fant. Okay, Noah Fant, the tight end from formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, was cut. He signed with the Cincinnati Bengals. So what does that mean for fantasy? Well, Jasicki's obviously the top tight end right there, but the Bengals play a lot of 12 personnel, which is two tight end sets. If you remember back a couple of years ago, Tanner Hudson even had some big games in PPR leagues where he had 6-7 catches. So Fant certainly has the potential to be a decent late round best ball pick. Now, what I would say is that signing is both good news and bad news. Well, the two players that it impacts are Noah Fant and Eric All, okay, another tight end from Iowa, by the way. But they drafted Eric All last year. He was coming off the torn ACL, and a lot of people were expecting him to really develop as a pass catcher. Well, Fant and All sort of play the same type of position. I mean, obviously they're both tight ends, but they're both pass catching, fast tight ends, and one of them is definitely going to see his value sort of just tank after this preseason. And last year I think the Bengals kept 4 tight ends out of training camp. They might do that again, but there's a possibility that Fant and Eric All are competing for one roster spot. But whichever one of those two players makes the team could have a little bit of sneaky late round best ball appeal in that offense. All right, the other storyline was the Hall of Fame game. Preseason is back. I mentioned yesterday Keandre Lambert-Smith. He's been making some waves in training camp. He had a touchdown in the game last night. And yesterday I mentioned that I want to see how the preseason goes for him. And it's off to a good start. I wouldn't overreact to this, though, especially in redraft. Okay, certainly if you have deep dynasty leagues, go and throw a $0 bid or a $2 bid at Keandre Lambert-Smith. But in redraft, again, you've got Ladd McConkey. He's going to be a focal point of this offense, the passing game. Quentin Johnston looks to have made another leap from the early news out at camp. And then they drafted Trey Harris in the second round. So, and they're a run-heavy team. Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh like to run the ball. They drafted Marion Hampton in the first round. So, again, if you want to take a shot on Lambert-Smith late, very late, and a best ball, that's fine. But I'm still sort of a little bit cautious on his redraft value. And same goes for Oronde Gadsden. Right? He's a rookie tight end, another day 3 pick, a converted receiver from Syracuse. A lot of people are sort of overreacting, saying, oh, well, Tyler Conklin didn't play last night and Gadsden did, so he's clearly behind Conklin. And I'm not sure that that's the case. It might be, but Jim Harbaugh played all of his rookies. Okay, I think Jim Harbaugh is just sort of like an old school type coach, and he was going to play his rookies regardless. That said, I don't know how much redraft value that Chargers tight end position is going to have just because of those other receivers I mentioned. So those are the two big things from yesterday, except, of course, for Terry McLaurin, which is probably the biggest story. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because we're taking a look at the NFC East, and we'll kick things off here with Washington. Terry McLaurin requested a trade yesterday. So what does that mean for his fantasy prospects, where you should be drafting him? Well, in my opinion, it doesn't impact him at all. Players in the NFL have very little power. I'm not here to tell you whether that's right or wrong. I'm not siding with the owners. I'm not siding with the players. I'm just here to tell you that players hold out, players demand trades, and they really have no leverage. They start getting fined really heavily once the season starts, and usually just end up showing up. Okay, you saw Brandon Ayuk has been requesting trades for the last couple of years. Jamar Chase held out last year. There are multiple examples of players requesting trades, and then they just eventually end up showing up because they have no leverage. They have short careers, and they have a very small window to earn the type of money that you earn in the NFL. So they show up and play, and I think that could happen with Terry McLaurin. Now, those of you saying, well, Devontae Adams requested a trade last year, and he was dealt. That's a different situation. It was during the season. He was a 32-year-old receiver on a team that was really horrible, and they knew they weren't going to be bringing him back the following year because of his contract. So that's a different story. Aside from that, players don't have a lot of leverage. So from a team perspective, it doesn't make any sense for Washington to deal McLaurin either. They don't have a lot of good young players other than, of course, Jaden Daniels. But the fact that they have Jaden Daniels there means he's on a rookie deal and he's cheap. And so there's no reason to have to be mindful of how much money you're spending on McLaurin. So by the time Jaden Daniels gets expensive at the end of his rookie deal, which is another 4 years from now, McLaurin's not going to have any guaranteed money left on whatever deal he signs. So I expect him to be with Washington this year. Crazier things have happened, but I would not overreact to this. For Washington, the other big story, which we touched on a little bit yesterday, is that 7th-round rookie Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. It looks like he's going to make the roster, and that might be a little bit premature to say here on August 1st, but he's had a very strong camp start, and he's already getting some first-team reps. I sort of speculated the other day that I wonder if this would make Austin Eckler available to other teams in the league via trade, and he would certainly be appealing to a team like the Houston Texans if Joe Mixon's going to miss any significant time. So keep an eye on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He's definitely an interesting late-round best ball pick in Dynasty. You should be going out and spending some blind bid on him for sure. And then the other story is Jalen Lane. Jalen Lane and Dante Thornton were in NFL Rough Draft's top 100 back in February, and both of them are off to great starts in camp. So for Lane, when it comes to redraft, yeah, he could be if he wins that third receiver position, he could have some sort of spotty value late in the year. Of course, if they trade McLaurin, if that does end up happening, Lane could have more redraft value. But in Dynasty, you should be stashing him. He should not be on your waiver wire. All right, let's move on from Washington to the Dallas Cowboys. For the Cowboys, we're talking about fantasy football here, but Taylor Guyton getting hurt really kind of that's a little bit of a sour way for them to start camp. I really like this passing offense. Guyton's going to miss the whole season, so that's not ideal. Tyler Guyton, of course, was slated to be the starting left tackle, so he won't be there. The passing game, again, there's not really any news there other than George Pickens looks good, and of course CeeDee Lamb is going to get 170, 180 targets. It looks like Kevontae Turpin might be the third receiver, and he could even get some touches out of the backfield. Of course, he was the big UFL return specialist who won the job with the Cowboys. The running back position is another big sort of story, I suppose. And I don't really like any of these running backs, but Jaden Blue's been getting some buzz the last couple days in camp. Now, let's be clear about what to expect with Blue. He's not going to be someone who's able to carry the ball 17, 18 times a game. It's just not who he is. He's more of a change of pace back. But if you're looking for a best case scenario, you're looking at sort of like an Alvin Kamara type workload where he gets a lot of targets and has some explosive run plays. But he's not going to be some running back who's rushing for 1,000 yards or 1,100 yards. His value would be in the passing game, and if you play PPR leagues, which it's not 1996, so you probably are, he could end up having some value. So he's certainly moved up on my late round radar. So that's the Cowboys. Moving on to the Eagles. Well, with the Eagles, they throw the ball to two receivers, and they have Saquon Barkley there. So there's not a whole lot of news going on here in terms of how it relates to fantasy football. What I will say is Devontae Smith missed the last 3 days of practice. It doesn't seem like it's anything serious. So the one storyline here is the backup running back position. Barkley had that big workload last year. If he goes down, who'd carry the load? And the answer is probably a mix of A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley. But this is noteworthy because before camp started, I thought Montrell Johnson might actually beat A.J. Dillon out for a roster spot. Montrell Johnson, the undrafted rookie free agent from University of Florida. They're the same type of back. But it sounds like A.J. Dillon's really having a strong start to camp. And it sounds like he would have the early down role if they had a regular season game today. And with Will Shipley sort of mixing in that Kenneth Gainwell change of pace role. So that really limits both of their upsides unless, and I saw some speculation and a reporter asked Dillon about this, unless Dillon being such a big back is used with the tush push. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but if he does get some of those carries under center, because he's a 245-pound back, he could have some really sneaky last round best ball value. And certainly I think if you're in a lineup league, a dynasty league, any league, A.J. Dillon, you're gonna laugh at me, he should not be on your waiver wire right now because it looks like as of right now, he would have a role if Saquon Barkley went down. All right, so that's what's going on with the Eagles. We're going to round things out with the NFC East here with the New York Giants. And with the Giants, that offense is going to run through Malik Neighbors. Jackson Dart has had a little bit of an up and down start, which doesn't mean anything, by the way. And really the only thing that I'm looking at here is the running back situation. Cam Scatterbo has really had a good start to camp. And I'm not saying that he's going to be their week one starter. I think the odds are against it. The odds are in favor of Tyrone Tracy being the week one starter. But this is a situation to monitor because the Giants last year, they tried their best to really just run one back out there. And I don't mean 100% of the touches, obviously. But what I am saying is whoever that starter is probably going to get a very large share of the workload. And Tracy and Scatterbo are both really good in the passing game as well. So this has a chance to be a really appealing or fantasy winning type situation. So Devin Singletary is the guy I've got my eye on. He's sort of like the fly in the ointment. And nothing against Singletary, he's fine. But Tracy and Scatterbo both have higher upside. And it's interesting to see Scatterbo has had such a good start to camp. He's really kind of justifying that ADP that a lot of people have been laughing about for the last couple of months in that 9th, 10th round. He's certainly a high upside handcuff. Aside from that, I don't want any part of the Giants' offense. So let's move on to the NFC North. The Bears have had all kinds of news at the start of camp. Sounds like Caleb Williams has been up and down. Again, that doesn't mean anything. It's the first week of training camp. But there have been glowing reviews of Rome Odunze in that X receiver position. He's a candidate to take a huge step forward. He's someone who I think, you should be drafting in the 6th round of redraft leagues or best ball leagues. Anytime he's there. I have a hard time passing on Rome Odunze in the 6th round. But DJ Moore has also had a lot of hype. And he's DJ Moore, so he should continue to be DJ Moore. Luther Burden's the interesting one here. He might play the slot. We've all heard about how good the slot receivers are in Ben Johnson offenses. He got off to a little bit of a rough start at camp because he wasn't practicing. It sounded like the coaching staff was frustrated with him, which, this is speculation here, but I wonder if that injury wasn't really something that should have been keeping him out. And part of that is Luther Burden had a reputation back in draft season of being someone who's going to show up and play on, well, Saturday in college, but the rest of the week he wasn't really the best practice player. He didn't really have the best work habits. And that could be why he fell out of the first round when so many people thought that he might go in that later third. That's why at NFL Rough Draft we had him in the second round. So once he came back, though, it sounds like he's had a couple of good days of practice. So that's another situation to monitor. And Colston Loveland, up until, I believe, yesterday, Cole Kmet was playing strictly with the backups. And he got some run with the ones yesterday. But Colston Loveland, the 21-year-old rookie tight end, coming off of a shoulder injury, stepped right into the tight end one spot and has, by all accounts, had a good camp start. At running back, Roschon Johnson. You know, I keep looking at him and thinking about how he could have the David Montgomery role in this offense. He's going late in drafts. I think he's a value. He could even potentially overtake DeAndre Swift, although, again, with Ben Johnson, there's not really going to be one clear starter. They're going to use both of those guys. So Roschon Johnson's a value, and he's off to a good start at camp as well. All right, let's move on. Again, I'm trying to make this quick, and this will go a lot quicker, by the way, once we finish recapping all of these first weeks of camp, because these videos will just be about what happened the previous day or the day that we record. So the Green Bay Packers, big story here. Jaden Reed has been getting some practice reps in 2 receiver sets. Remember, that's been a big story for him. He's had 2 great years and does not play in 2 receiver sets. So if he plays with 2 receivers on the field, well, he could have a real breakout year. And Matthew Golden, the first-round receiver, he was our top receiver on our board this year. He has really had a great start to camp. So he looks like he's going to have an immediate role. And everybody's been talking about Emeka Egbuka. I think Matthew Golden's been just as impressive, if not more, at the start of his NFL career. He's certainly someone you should have your eye on around the 7th round in redraft. Aside from that, you know, Marshawn Lloyd got hurt, but it sounds like it's not going to be anything long-term. The biggest concern there is that Marshawn Lloyd was hurt last year, and you don't want him to go down that Keandre Miller sort of path where, you know, he's kind of done before his career ever gets started. Hopefully he's back within the next week or so. If not, Emmanuel Wilson's going to rise up draft boards just a little bit. All right, that's the Packers. Let's close things out today with the Minnesota Vikings. And with the Vikings, I mean, Justin Jefferson's got the hamstring. But with wide receivers, it's not like, oh, well, if Justin Jefferson misses, you know, the first week, somebody else is going to have 11 targets. It's just not the way it works with passing games. Okay, it'll get spread out amongst a bunch of different players. What is interesting here is if he does somehow miss week 1, and I don't think we're anywhere close to that, and I don't think it's going to happen. Jordan Addison looks like he's going to have a 1 to 3 game suspension for his DUI last summer as well. And that makes Ty Felton a little bit interesting to me. He led the Big Ten in receiving last year. I thought he should have been a 3rd round pick, and I thought he was getting underrated. And then he was a 3rd round pick, which made me think, well, maybe he wasn't getting underrated. So, you know, he's just someone I'm going to have my eye on in the preseason here. I think he's got a chance to be something there. Although for redraft, you know, for best ball, it's tough because Jefferson's going to get all those targets, and Addison will be back after a game to 3 games, and he'll get his targets. TJ Hawkinson's going to get his as well. So the big story here really is the running back situation, where it sounds like Jordan Mason is not going to be the handcuff for Aaron Jones. Rather, it's going to be more of a timeshare. And I've heard that they like Jordan Mason in goal line and short yardage situations, which could really give him some value. So when you're getting into that 10th, 11th round, and you're starting to look at handcuff running backs, just keep in mind that not only is Jordan Mason a high upside handcuff running back, I mean, we saw what he did with the 49ers last year, but he's going to have a role, even if Aaron Jones is healthy. So downgrade Aaron Jones just a little bit, but Jordan Mason for sure looks like a value in that 10th, 11th round range. So that is the recap for today. I've cut a few minutes off of my time. I'll be back tomorrow to wrap up the NFC and the rest of the NFL camp updates from the first week and a half camp. And I'm also going to cover any other news that pops up, along with instant reaction about how it impacts your fantasy football teams. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you next time.